Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the first session on day 4. We are joined by John Riady, CEO, Lipo Karawasi, and Managing Director, Multipolar. My name is Joji Philip, Editor-in-Chief and Founder at Deal Street Asia. And John, on the other hand, actually needs no introduction. A big picture way of looking at the Lipo Group is that the conglomerate is actually plugged into all the all broad swath of the Indonesian economy, be it tech, hospitals, healthcare, lifestyle malls, real estate, urban housing, financial services, supermarkets, departmental stores. And in that context, the group's performance can be seen as a proxy for Indonesia's recovery from the pandemic and also for the country's growth. In 2019, in a surprise move, John became the CEO of IDX listed Lipo Karawaci and was tasked with restoring the property developers' many challenges at that time. Lipo is a majority shareholder in Indonesia's largest private healthcare services provider and also owns a stake in SGX listed Lipo Malls Indonesia Retail Trust, which owns and operates one in every 4 malls in Indonesia. As Lipo CEO, John is focused on concentrating on the sweet spots in tech, real estate, and the healthcare business. John, delighted to have you join us again this year.
Thanks for having me, Joji. Good to be back here again with you.
Yes, I would love to start with the tech, which is on everyone's mind right now, and again go with a big picture question on tech. When you began investing in tech around 2014-15, the Indonesia's tech market was around 60 million. And now you estimate it to be about 60 or 70 billion max. So it's grown about 1,000 times in the last 7 years. You also were on, in some interview recently, you said that you see Indonesia's tech market hitting 300 to 400 billion in the next couple of years. That's a massive 6x, 7x growth over the next 3-4 years. So how do you sort of see, can you just explain the reasoning behind these numbers? And do you think Indonesia has the potential to be Southeast Asia's and perhaps even the world's one of the most exciting technology markets going forward?
Joji, thanks for the question. I think it's an extremely appropriate and timely question. We are in Indonesia a consumer services group. We have the pleasure of serving over 40 million unique Indonesians every year. And over the last 6-7 years, the most exciting thing in technology in Indonesia has been technology. We made our first early stage investment in technology in 2014. At that time, if you added up all the value of all the different technology companies, the entire space of technology companies in Indonesia would be about $60 million. Today, that same space is approximately $60 billion. If you add, the values of the different tech companies, and I'm being, reasonably conservative, 60 billion. So as you rightly pointed out, it's this is a space that's grown 1,000 times in the last 7 years. But I think interestingly, we're just getting started. I think over the next couple of years, we're going to see this space go from 60 billion to maybe 200, 300, 400 billion dollars. And we believe that for a number of reasons. First of all, if you take a look at the technology ecosystem in China, the tech ecosystem really exploded when the first generation of Chinese tech companies went public, Alibaba, Tencent, Baidu in the early 2000s. And what happened at that point was that it was, that the tech ecosystem in China was able to tap into sort of public equity markets. And all the early stage investors made money and reinvested into the early stage market. And so I think you're going to see the same thing here. As companies go public, starting with Bukalapak and a few others in the pipeline, all the early stage guys will exit and will reinvest. And those companies too will raise a lot of capital and invest in their own respective ecosystems. So I think we're only at the start. Now, remember that in a market like China, MSCI China, for example, is about 25-26% tech weighting. In Indonesia, MSCI Indonesia is practically today 0 tech weighting. So, I believe over the next couple of years, that's going to be 10 to 12 to 15%. So you can see how technology in Indonesia is the biggest value creation opportunity. And I'm a big believer that, until today, Indonesia has always been driven by commodities and consumer. So these always been the two engines of Indonesia's growth. And so with technology, now you have a sort of a third engine. Obviously, technology and consumer are interrelated, but these are the drivers of the Indonesian economy. So we're very excited about this, Joji. We think that this is the biggest value creation opportunity in Indonesia and probably Southeast Asia today. And so this has been a big part of our strategy in Indonesia over the last couple of years.
Thanks, John. Before I come to how Lippo plans to ride the tech wave, just want to ask something that you talked about of MSCI Indonesia Tech can potentially become 15% of the IDX at some point. In that context, how significant was the Bukalapak listing that just happened recently? Because that was the first step, and now it sort of opens the floodgates for capital to come in. And then with this amount of capital coming into the system, like you explained, that's going to be setting off the next couple of waves.
Well, the entire Indonesian stock market has a combined market capitalization of about $500 billion. I believe we are, or if not, approaching to become the largest in Southeast Asia. But really, if you compare that to the size of the Indonesian GDP, it's still fairly small. So I think the Indonesian capital markets is at a critical inflection point. And a big driver of this is the retail trading market. The retail trading makes up 60, 70, on some days, up to 80% of the entire trading volume on the Indonesian market. And the number of retail trading accounts have more than doubled over the last 12 months. So, we're at a very exciting time in the Indonesian stock market. So to answer your question, how important was the Bukalapak listing? I think it's a very important milestone. We all forget this, but in the early 2000s, before the first generation of Chinese tech companies went public, many people questioned whether the Chinese market could absorb the tech companies, whether there was a market for that, whether there was enough risk capital for companies like that. Obviously, today, everything is history. I mean, you've got a handful of companies, each worth north of a couple $100 billion, all of them trading very well in China. So I think in that similar way, the Indonesian market is going through the same developmental journey. And I think the listing of Bukalapak was a good test case, which all things considered, I think is reasonably successful. And so this will open up the door for many others to follow suit. And I think this will lay the groundwork for what I mentioned earlier, for technology to become a larger and larger part of the stock market, and will at some point soon approach that sort of 10 to 15% of the index benchmark.
Got it. So how can other investors, and especially let's talk about Lippo first, take advantage of this biggest value creation that's set to emerge over the next couple of years? If the market is set to become 400 billion in the next 4 or 5 years, at Lippo, you're already very active in the early stage with your VC and Ventura. But what about the plans for the late stage? In terms of pre-IPO rounds of all these companies that are coming up for listing. You did Bukalapak. What about GoTo? What about all the other companies that are coming up for listing?
Well, look, there are many ways to participate, in this exciting development in Indonesia. We are doing it by approaching or through a 4 sort of pronged strategy. The first is investing early stage. This is what we've been doing since 2014. The media has covered quite extensively some of our investments in companies that today are either approaching $1 billion or over $1 billion. But I think what often we forget is that some of those investments were, $50,000, $100,000, $200,000 at the beginning. So it was because we invested very early on that we were able to follow the development, work very closely with the founders, understand their business model, and learn a lot along the way. So I'm a big believer in investing early because that really gives you a unique insight and a front row seat into the development of the market. So that will continue to be an important part of what we do through an entity called Multipolar. So that's early stage investing. The second entity, or the second pillar, I should say, is late stage investing. So this becomes a two bookends of our strategy: early stage and late stage. Late stage is everything sort of approaching IPO or pre-IPO or IPO in Indonesia. So we continue to also invest. We're investors in Bukalapak and all this stuff that you'll see in the pipeline coming out soon. So these are the two important bookends. And I'm a big believer in investing in later stage companies because by definition, these are sort of the one of the 1,000 companies that have made it this far. And so again, if you take a look at the example of China, if you would have invested in all the companies that are listed, you would have done very well over a 10-year period post their listing. They beat the benchmark, their peers, etc. They've just become so dominant in an ecosystem that's growing very fast. So early stage investing, pillar one; late stage, pre-IPO, IPO, pillar two. Pillar three is becoming local partners to global technology giants who want to expand into Indonesia. So we are local partners to a number of those companies. That's pillar three. The fourth and final pillar is how do we unlock the value of our traditional businesses? So, for example, recently our supermarket chain called MPPA or Hypermart, it's a supermarket chain that has about a 25% market share in the supermarket and hypermarket space in Indonesia, partnered with one of the leading tech giants in Indonesia. So that has given us the ability to partner with a digital company to help the company digitize and pursue a real omni-channel strategy. So that's really how we're participating, George. Early stage, late stage, partnering up with foreign tech giants, and also finally getting the traditional companies to partner with digital companies. And so through this sort of four-pronged strategy, we think we have we're positioned quite nicely to benefit from the technology sort of transformation in Indonesia.
Got it. Among all these four strategies that you listed, will you still go out and build companies in the white spaces? For example, you built out OVO, which is one of the largest payment companies in Indonesia now, that's mostly owned by Grab and Tokopedia. And also, what about the local unicorns? Like Gojek recently bought a minority stake in your retail arm. So partnering these companies, where do they fall?
Well, our OVO experience is an example of us incubating companies. So OVO is a payments company that we had started, and initially we used our ecosystem to drive the adoption and the usage and the traction of payments. But I'm also a believer that in the digital world, use cases are so important. And however large your own ecosystem is, it's never large enough. So in OVO, very early on, as soon as that payment system gained traction, we partnered with Grab, we partnered with Tokopedia, and through those partnerships, and thanks to those partnerships, OVO became the leading digital payments company in Indonesia. So we like that model. We will continue to use our ecosystem or leverage our ecosystem to drive and support the growth of technology companies, but do so in a way through partnerships. So we will continue to do that, and that falls sort of in between sort of the four buckets. We want to continue to leverage our ecosystem to support the various companies and investments and partnerships that we enter into. So that's very exciting, and we'll continue to do that. You mentioned Hypermart. That's also the partnership that I had alluded to earlier. That sort of falls in category 4. So whether that's our department stores, our supermarket, our bank, our securities company, et cetera, we will continue to be leveraging on the relationships that we've built in the technology space to unlock value in these traditional companies. And I'm a believer that so-called offline companies have a lot of value add. Remember, Joji, in a market like Indonesia, offline retail, or what they call brick and mortar retail, is still 30% of the total retail market. And even in China, it's about 50% of total retail, right? So even in a market like Indonesia, so-called offline retail will continue to grow. It's a very exciting place and time.
Got it. So I just want to come back to a related point. You mentioned Multipolar earlier, and most of your tech investments, especially all of your tech investments are under this entity. When it comes to making late stage investments, the capital commitments are pretty high. Therefore, how do you look at a structure for Lippo? Because do you see all of your other businesses sort of continuing and Multipolar is where all your tech investments are put under? And do you see a structure something like SoftBank has, where Multipolar goes out and raises capital from external LPs to do big tech investments?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, Joji. I mean, look, like I mentioned, I think in Indonesia, we look at ourselves as a consumer services company. We think the biggest and most exciting opportunity is serving the emerging middle class in Indonesia. And we do so, the way we're structured is we've got a number of companies that are operating companies. We operate one of the largest real estate companies. We operate one of the largest healthcare companies. Now, when it comes to technology and investing for the future, Multipolar is our entity. And through Multipolar, we'll be investing in that, 4 buckets that I mentioned earlier. Now, you're also absolutely correct that as big as Multipolar is, and Multipolar's NAV today is around $1.5 to $2 billion. But as big as you are, it's advantageous to have an even sort of bigger balance sheet when you're investing in technology. So we are also investing third-party capital. So you mentioned SoftBank. In a similar fashion, SoftBank obviously has a vision fund where they are the biggest LP as well as the manager of the fund. Obviously, in a much smaller scale, we're pursuing the same strategy, where we will be managing funds in which we are the biggest LP. But our plan is for every dollar that we invest, we raise $2 or $3, and in doing so, we're able to leverage on the deal flow that we see, and we're able to deploy more capital, support our portfolio companies, things like that.
So will Multipolar have a fund like the Vision Fund, like a fund structure? Anything that you can share in terms of what are the corpus that you're looking to raise?
Yep, definitely. So obviously we'll be investing from our balance sheet, but also through the funds that we manage. And you'll see in the coming months, we'll be sharing more information around what funds we raise, how large, who are some of our anchor and partner LPs. We're seeing a lot of interest in people who want to invest in Indonesia. And I think they've seen that Multipolar has a track record and the deal flow, and unique deal flow. So we're very pleased to be partnering with them.
Got it. Just want to step back a bit and look at we spoke about tech for so long and the enabling factors that have got these tech companies do so well in Indonesia. The country's internet penetration is at about 74% at the end of 2020. And last year, it ended the year with about nearly 200 million users, and especially 25 million new users. And a lot of Indonesians, even all of the new users, now having to go online for most of their daily activity. So due to the pandemic, have we entered an era where consumers are actually finally tracking ahead of the firms in digital adoption, where they're also ready to pay online, do transactions, and even in provinces outside Jakarta?
The pace of technological adoption in Indonesia has been incredible. Pre-pandemic, Joji, as you know, it's been one of the most exciting growth markets for technology around the world. But certainly, the pandemic has further accelerated that across all the different metrics. So I think the pandemic has only accelerated what was already a pre-existing trend. So definitely, we've been investing in technology since 2014. And the changes and the developments over the last 24 months has only grown our conviction. But remember, Joji, like I said earlier, if you take a look at a market like China, from total retail, around 50% is offline retail, 30% is online. So 50, 30, and 20%, the remainder is traditional retail, so unorganized retail. So even in a market like China, you see that online obviously grew extremely fast, but as it approached sort of high 20s, it sort of tapered off in terms of market share of total retail. So in Indonesia, so if in China it's 50, 30, 20, in Indonesia, it's 30% modern retail, about 10% online, and the lion's share, 60%, is actually traditional retail. And so I think in a market like Indonesia, we'll approach sort of a China state where modern retail will grow from 30% to 50%, online from approximately 10% to 30%. Obviously, the biggest loser will be traditional retail. But I think the takeaway here is that even modern retail or brick and mortar will continue to grow and will continue to be the biggest part of total retail. So the answer, I think, is not necessarily online, although that certainly is the biggest, the fastest growing part of the market. But it's about online and offline retail. How do you combine online and offline retail to become an omni-channel retailing experience, right? So that's what we believe. So definitely, I think the last 24 months has accelerated online trends and online adoption. But still, if you take a step back, a big chunk or the biggest chunk of the economy still happens in so-called offline markets. So again, it's not about online versus offline. It's about how do you combine those two experiences into a very powerful omni-channel and hyper-local experience.
Interesting. Just a related question, John, from what you said, when all of these online like activities grow, transactions grow, what's the scope for creating a lot of B2B companies in the tech? Because all the companies that we discussed about earlier, they're all B2C. But if you look at China, if you look at the US, even markets like India, there are lots of B2B unicorns that sort of play, that come up when any online activity goes up. So, and that's a space, be it Indonesia, Southeast Asia, we've not really seen much in terms of our number of unicorns as compared to the other markets. Even somebody like a Zillingo, where you're invested in, they're all in the B2B space. Is that a huge opportunity?
A huge opportunity, Joji. Look, I think your observations are correct, I think, for two reasons. First of all, I do believe that typically, look, in this changing ecosystem, consumers are changing, but businesses too are changing. Right? And so consumer internet companies are internet companies that serve the consumer. B2B sort of enterprise businesses are technology companies that serve enterprises, right? So these two entities or persons are changing. Obviously, consumers change faster than businesses. And so typically in markets like Indonesia, in more nascent markets, the consumer internet space takes off faster or takes off first. And so naturally, you'll see those companies take off much faster. But I think equally important is the enterprise space. And even though they take longer to change, the changes that we're seeing are equally intense. And so I think the enterprise space is also exciting. It's just a little bit later. It happens a little bit later. But I think the second reason why your observation is correct is, consumer internet companies are household names because we all interact with those products. Typically, in enterprise businesses, they're less household names just because we don't interact with them. But it doesn't mean they're not gaining traction. So we're also seeing a lot of activity in the enterprise space, and so I think that's certainly an area to watch out from.
Interesting. Just going back to looking at the successful Indonesian unicorns, whether it's the Gojek, Tokopedia combined, Grab's operations in Indonesia, C Group's operations in Indonesia, Traveloka, others like Credivo that's listing via SPAC, Ovo, Dana. All of them have sort of payments of fintech as a big chunk of their operation. So do you think that when it comes to B2C in Indonesia, financial services will be core to all of these companies?
Well, financial services, as you know, Joji, is the largest market in any economy, right? Second to real estate, financial markets are the largest market in any economy. And so naturally, for all these large ecosystems, you mentioned Grab, Gojek, Shopee, et cetera, who've amassed huge consumer bases, it would make sense for all of them to also serve their customers' financial services needs. So yes, I do believe, and we're seeing, all these companies get into that space because I think that's a great way to serve the consumer. It's a great way to also monetize on your customer base. So yes, I do think that all these companies will continue to go deeper into financial services, and I think there's space for everyone. I think it's a huge space, and so it makes sense.
A related question here on Ovo, the formation of GoTo, which is the Gojek Tokopedia combined, has sort of put Ovo in a little bit of uncertain territory. So, because at one point you were the largest shareholder in Ovo, now it's Grab. What's the future for Ovo? Do you see them merging with Dana? Is that still on?
Similar to China, the industry structure in Indonesia, technology, relative to markets like the US and Europe, I think will cluster around a number of large technology giants and companies. Grab will be one, GoTo will be another, C obviously another very large ecosystem, potentially Bukalapak. And so I think that's great. I think that's healthy for the development of the technology ecosystem in Indonesia. I think for a player like ourselves, our hope is always to maintain an open ecosystem. As you know, we've been partners and investors in Grab for a long time. We've co-invested with Gojek in a lot of companies. Today, we're investors in Bukalapak, et cetera. So, I think our approach, our philosophy has always been and will continue to be to maintain an open ecosystem and work with all the players. And the same goes with Ovo. Ovo initially started with our ecosystem. Then we worked with Grab because we think they've got an extremely powerful ecosystem. And then Tokopedia. And so for me, I think I will continue to support whatever is best for Ovo. If that means bringing in a larger and larger ecosystem and a use case, which is good for the consumer, I'd be very supportive of that.
Yeah. Just one related question on the financial services space, which is, what's the role of how do you see regulatory changes? Because Indonesia now has new rules on capping foreign shareholders' control, especially at the front end, if I'm not mistaken, at about 49%. Also control of such companies by local shareholders. So how much will regulation play in, this is just an example, but as the tech industry grows?
Regulation and technology will, always come hand in hand, especially in a market like financial services and banking. And by the way, even technology aside, regulatory and financial services has always been very closely related. But what I can say for the Indonesia market is that I think the government and our regulators is probably amongst the most technology friendly globally, and also foreign investor friendly globally. Joji, you cover the technology and deals market around the world. So you'll know that compared to markets like China, like India, like Singapore, quite frankly, foreign investment in Indonesia and also in the financial services space is amongst the most welcoming. So I'm quite positive about the way that Indonesia has approached their regulatory framework. I think they've found a right balance between wanting to support the ecosystem, wanting to support innovation, allowing new players, new products, but also being sensible and prudent on the broader concerns around financial services and stability.
Got it. I just want to ask one or two more questions on the tech space before moving on to your healthcare real estate.
Sure.
The first is, how do you see, especially some of the global VCs who have become very active in Southeast Asia and Indonesia? These VCs, the Tiger Global, DST, Hido Sophia's, Greylock, all of them are they come in, they put in, they don't negotiate on valuations. They often don't take a board seat. They do deals at record pace. How do regional and domestic VCs compete here?
So, I mentioned at the start of our session today how this space has grown from 60 million to 60 billion. So it's 1,000 times over the last 7 years. The reason why that's been able to happen is because we've seen so much interest from these regional and global investors. So I think the all the different funds you mentioned is very positive for the ecosystem, and we've benefited immensely from it. So I think and I hope they will continue to do more and more in Indonesia. Now, I think as for players like us, local players like us, look, I think we've got a different angle. We've got a different value proposition. We work with all those investors. We've co-invested with all of those investors. Typically, we come in at different parts of the capital of the life of the stage of those companies and different parts of the capital structure. So I think it's very much complementary in nature, and we need more of them to come in, and we need more local players and local funds to invest. So I think collaboration is the name of the game.
Okay. And how do you see the crypto space, John? Because Indonesians are among the most active crypto traders globally. 3x more Indonesians trade in crypto than the equity markets. And we understand that the Lippo Group has also held talks with some of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchanges who want to come into this part of the world. So how do you see that space?
Well, before I get into sort of crypto in Indonesia, I think our view of crypto and DeFi globally is we take a very constructive and optimistic view. We think if you take a 10, a 20-year horizon, we're really at the very, very early stages of the development of this technology, of crypto as a cryptocurrency, but also crypto as a sort of underlying technology for other uses that could be even more exciting, and blockchain and uses such as that. So we're very excited. We're learning a lot about it, and we've taken some bets, some investments through Multipolar. We made our first investment in the crypto space, I believe, in 2017. That's done extremely well. We wish we would have invested more. We have some small investments in various crypto currencies, that are listed and traded. So it's a small part of what we do, but we are getting our feet wet. We're learning more and more about the space, and we hope to continue to do more investments in that area.
Will you partner any of the global firms, maybe set up local exchanges or something like that in Indonesia?
We're looking into it. We're studying the regulatory framework. The regulation of crypto exchanges in Indonesia falls under the Trade Ministry. And you're right, Joji. This is a very new space, but there is more volume on Indonesian crypto exchanges as compared to the Indonesian capital markets. So that's extremely interesting. So the government has also, our trade minister is extremely progressive, has taken on I think a very constructive approach to regulation. I think he will allow crypto and crypto exchanges to exist under the right framework. So I think in the coming months, the government will be announcing what that framework is, but definitely a space to continue to follow.
Interesting. I just want to move to the other sectors that you're very active in. 50% of the group's business or revenues actually comes from the healthcare space, where you run Indonesia's largest private chain of hospitals. You also have a telemedicine app. So in terms of your investment, telemedicine is that's an area where some of these startups have done globally, and even in Southeast Asia done very well. How do you see both of these operations in the next couple of years, your hospitals as well as your telemedicine?
So you're right, Joji. Through Siloam Hospitals, we manage 40 hospitals across Indonesia. We built our first hospital in 1992, and in the early 2000s started to roll out more and more hospitals. And today we've got 40 hospitals, probably adding 2 to 3 every year. Healthcare is probably one of the most underpenetrated industries in Indonesia. Healthcare spend in Indonesia is only approximately 3% of GDP. The OECD average is closer to 6 to 7%. In more developed markets like the US, it's like 14, 15, 16%. So clearly healthcare in Indonesia has a lot of room to grow. It is also coincidentally one of the industries that's obviously benefited from this pandemic, this unfortunate pandemic. And it's benefited not because I think people's awareness around health and wellness has only grown through this pandemic. People now are more aware of their health. They want to live healthier life, have healthier lifestyles. And so healthcare is very, very exciting. And so we're very excited that through Siloam, we have an exposure to the largest healthcare company in Indonesia. Now, the technology part of healthcare is very exciting, and we think it's complementary to what we do. And so we work together with all the different telemedicine, telehealth services in Indonesia to drive traffic to our hospitals. Halodoc, Prixa, Ido, the list goes on. But those are, all of them are extremely valuable partners of ours. And in some of those cases, we're also invested in them. So we're also active investors in the health and tech, in the intersection of health and tech. And another company that we're invested in that's, I think, about to do a SPAC soon, they've announced this, is a company called Prenetics. They do personalized medicine. And so they'll be merging with a SPAC, I think, in New York in the coming months. So very exciting space, and we look forward to continuing to invest in the ecosystems to find opportunities to collaborate and to work with, and to plug into, so to speak, our healthcare operations.
Okay, but some of the other telemedicine apps, like you mentioned Halodoc, there's Allodoctor. So we see the potential to sort of see several unicorns emerge in this space. Do you see yourself like building out your telemedicine app, something like you did with Ovo, something similar? And a related question, you also have clinics in Singapore, in Myanmar. So do you see your healthcare being a Southeast Asia play going forward?
We take the view that healthcare is one of the most exciting opportunities in Asia because of all the demographic changes that's happening. And so that's why we've got exposure and have invested in healthcare in a number of markets that you've mentioned. Having said that, I also believe that healthcare is very different from market to market. From Singapore to Indonesia to Myanmar to China, the healthcare needs are very, very different. And so we have built independent companies to run the independent healthcare units in each market to be able to best serve the needs of each market. So yes, we are excited about healthcare in Asia. We've organized ourselves independently around each market. And technology in healthcare as well is also very different, Joji. The health tech needs in Singapore versus Myanmar versus Indonesia are also very different. So in Indonesia, our strategy in health tech is to invest in the ecosystem. So I don't think you'll see us, roll out a sort of lipo telehealth, and an aggregator, so to speak. We think that our strategy in health in Indonesia is to work with the ecosystem. Hopefully, we want to be the backbone through which and with which all the different technology companies will plug into. And we want to work with as many players as we can, and along the way invest in some of them and participate in their growth stories as well.
Yeah, I want to just move to your real estate play. The last time you were at a summit in January last year, that time you were talking about how you're turning around your real estate operations, LPKR. You started with a US $1 billion capital raising initiative. Post that, we have seen reasonably strong execution on the real estate projects. And we've also seen the marketing sales growth. It's sort of cushioned the impact for you overall. One of the things that we've noticed is, especially during the pandemic, housing sales have shot up. It's nearly double. What's the logic there?
So that's interesting, Joji. In the first half of this year, our real estate sales, marketing sales, is up over 120% year on year. And that's true also with a number of our peers. If you would have asked me at the beginning of the pandemic what my views were on real estate and what our growth projections were, I wouldn't have told you that it would have doubled, year on year. And yet that's what we've seen. And so that's, extremely exciting. And I think what we're seeing in Indonesia is that Indonesia is entering a golden era of homeownership. So, again, similar to China in the 1990s, where, as countries approach sort of a per capita GDP of 3,000, 4,000 US dollars, typically you see people beginning to be able to afford homes. And so in Indonesia, you're seeing, I think it's a combination of rising incomes, all-time low mortgage rates, and also better and better innovation and products on the part of developers like ourselves. And, a combination of that, you're seeing an explosion in homeownership. Homeownership in Greater Jakarta, I'll give you this data point, is only at 45%. That's very low compared to even like India, a place with a much lower per capita income. So I think over the last, 1 or 2 years, you've seen developers like ourselves lower our price points to be able to deliver homes at a price point that is affordable for the middle income consumer. But doing so also in a way, these products are very beautifully designed. So, we're working with one of Indonesia's leading architects. Typically, this architect would design homes that are in the millions of dollars. But we've worked with them to design homes that are affordable, and really for the mass sort of middle market. So again, I think consumers today want not only affordability and value, but they also want design. They also want functionality. They want a lifestyle. So that's what we're doing. We're democratizing design and home ownership for the Indonesian masses.
I'll quickly take a question from the audience related to real estate. Update on your cooperation with SoftBank in the property sector.
You know, no industry it will be unaffected by technology and innovation, right? So obviously we spoke at length about technology and what we're doing to invest in the ecosystem through Multipolar. But across all of our businesses, whether that's healthcare and even real estate, technology will be a bigger and bigger and bigger part of what we do. In technology, in real estate, the impact of technology in our townships to be able to enhance security, et cetera, and that's what we're doing with SoftBank. 2 years ago, we entered into a partnership to roll out smart city applications and systems across our townships in Indonesia. So that's what we're doing. We are also looking into the 3D sort of prefabricated real estate development technology as well, Joji. We think that's a huge space and potentially can transform and revolutionize construction and real estate. So it's really very exciting, and I think over the next 3 to 5 to 7 years, even real estate will see huge progress thanks to technology.
Just one last question on real estate. LPKR today is strong. It's not reliant on dividends from subsidiaries and asset sales to support liquidity. S&P changed its outlook on the company to stable from negative in May this year. So in that context, is the crisis over for good? Are you sort of strong enough now for weathering any downturn and to continue developing your new affordable housing strategy?
I've been extremely grateful for the progress that we've made, and also, despite the challenges around COVID, how we've managed to innovate and stay ahead of the curve. So certainly today, I'm very excited about our businesses across the board. Our real estate business, as we talked about earlier, is doing extremely well thanks to the rise in sort of home ownership in Indonesia. Our healthcare business too is a market leader in a very fast-growing industry. Healthcare in Indonesia, very exciting. Also, a lot of our investments in technology over the last 7 years has paid off. And a lot of this is luck. A lot of this is being in the right time at the right place. And we're also very grateful to our government that I think has navigated the crisis extremely well. That's given us a great operating environment in a place like Indonesia. So look, we're very, very blessed. We're very grateful for what's happening in Indonesia. We're very excited about the future. At the same time, we remain prudent and careful and cautious because there continues to be a lot of volatility globally. And so, I think we take a balanced approach, both one of excitement, but also one of sort of just caution and prudence as we navigate this exciting and volatile market.
So does that mean the new management team that you put in place when you took over in 2019 has delivered? And if they have, what's next for you and the group?
Well, I think as to whether we've delivered is for people like you to judge, Joji, not for us to say. But I certainly am thankful for what progress we've made. And again, a lot of it is being at the right time, at the right place, in the right industries, the right sectors. And I think we've been fortunate to do that. As for what's next for us, look, I think, and thankfully, in all the different industries we're in, whether it's real estate or healthcare or technology or financial services, these are all sectors and industries with so much growth potential. So, we look forward to continuing to invest, continuing to innovate, and continuing to serve the Indonesian market. The last thing I'll say to end is, as we look at the future, one of the biggest focuses for myself will be around sustainability. I'm very grateful that, for a company like ours, we serve 40 million Indonesians every year. So the opportunity that we have to impact the lives of Indonesians, to provide better quality and access to healthcare, housing, all the different things that we're doing is tremendous. So I think we've got a huge opportunity to make a difference, to make Indonesia a better place, to push forward sustainability goals, across all the different ESG metrics. So that will be a very, very important part of our business, and certainly intertwined with how we look at the future.
Yeah, thanks, John. We are already 5 minutes over time, but it was a pleasure talking to you. Great insights. Thank you for all the updates on your businesses, and I'm sure our audience too enjoyed listening into you. And it was great to have you with us for our summit. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Joji. Take care. All the best with the rest of the forum.
Yeah, thank you.